So excited to be here with you guys today to talk about the 2025 Compliance Benchmark Report. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce our guest today. Stephanie Euler is the EVP of Attestation Services here at A-LIGN. So she helps manage all client relationships and has a great depth of knowledge working in this industry for over 10 years. So Stephanie, we're so excited you're here to talk about the results of the report with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's dive in. I'll get started by talking a little bit about what the Compliance Benchmark Report is, a little bit of background about it. So you may be wondering why a director of content marketing is leading this webinar today. And this is because this is A-LIGN's flagship piece of content. Every year, we survey compliance professionals to learn about industry trends, what's important to their business, the challenges they're facing, and then we're able to bring together a report with great information to help you benchmark yourself against your peers to see, are you struggling with the same things they are? In what areas do you have opportunities to improve? Maybe where are you pacing ahead of your competitors and your peers? And so we have this full report. The link should be in the chat where you can go download the report if you haven't read it already. But today we're going to take you through the 4 key findings of the report, share a little bit about some of the key stats and insights we've gotten. And Stephanie will bring some great commentary about the way you can think about your business with the findings that we have and what they mean for you. So let's dive in. All right, so the first theme for this year's report is quality reigns supreme. So we asked people, how important is a quality report to you? When you get your final report, are you concerned about the quality? And 70% said that it's extremely important. So Stephanie, would love to hear your perspective on this. Like, is quality a new thing people are talking about? Have you seen this change? And is this something that you talk to customers about?
Absolutely. First, I have to say that it makes me extremely happy when customers care about quality. I obviously have made a living by doing audits, and quality is a huge portion of that. So happy to see that this was the result and that the things that we care about as auditors are also the same things that our clients care about. I wouldn't say that it's a new concept at all. Obviously, as the years go on, the risks get greater as technology advances. Our clients are really constantly trying to prepare themselves for the different risks that are coming towards their businesses. So quality, of course, is important when it comes to audit because it is another line of defense that they have, another line of assurance that they have for themselves and giving themselves confidence, giving their customers confidence in their security stature as well. So no, I wouldn't say it's a new concept, but I am always relieved and excited at the same time to see quality rank high in the eyes of our clients. It makes the audit process, I think, a little bit more enjoyable from my perspective when someone is going through it with the lens of truly trying to enhance their security posture and validate their security posture instead of more of a checkbox activity. So I think that it can go either way for certain types of customers, but I was really happy to see this result personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you talk to the auditors at A-LIGN about quality? Like, what is the messaging that you're giving to them about the value and how they can make sure that they're keeping quality top of mind as they're going through the audit process?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really, really important question because quality isn't just a one-man job, right? It reigns throughout our entire organization, all the way down to the people that are doing the testing day in and day out. And at the end of the day, trying to validate the type of work that we do, I think a lot of auditor stigma in the world isn't always that positive, right? When you think about spending time with your auditor, you probably think about, kind of like the slap on the wrist on whenever you're getting audited for anything. It doesn't matter if it's security or taxes or, really maybe it's even like an OSHA security or safety audit. So I think that there's a negative connotation with auditors in general. Giving that fresh breath of air and bringing a quality importance to a report and to a client gives our auditors a lot of energy. They're excited by that. Obviously, they go to school for these items and they're really excited and passionate about it. So they're excited to bring that value to their customers as well. I think it's just in our nature to be excited about quality, but we do spend a lot of time on quality measures internally, whether that is going through our own peer reviews or our own accreditation cycles. It's important for us to stay on the up and up as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about what is important to our customers when they're choosing an audit partner. So, one thing that we love to see in this year's results is that the main things that our customers and the market in general is saying that's important to them is an experienced team and report quality. So, I think just what you were talking about, we have the right experienced people, we are putting quality first, and really focusing on this. So, do you feel like this aligns with what you think customers are asking for?
Yeah, I think it does. And generally speaking, they go hand in hand, right? Quality auditors, they generate quality reports, and that quality comes a lot of from their experience that they have working across different industries, different markets. So no, I'm not surprised to see this result at all. I think that the graph is interesting. When we're sitting and we're talking about quality at A-LIGN, we talk a lot about how technology can enable us to do more in the realm of quality. So kind of even just expanding after report quality and going into that tech-enabled audit portion of it, I think it's really important we're able to use technology to enhance and advance the type of work that our auditors can do, the type of feedback that they're giving to clients. It's freeing them up from small administrative tasks internally that we all have to do regardless of where we work, but it's giving them more client face time. It's giving them more client quality time to have some bigger conversations about how our clients benchmark and compare to other types of organizations within their industry, within their market. So, I think that these results are interesting and that one isn't really any more important than the other, but you can see even in the graph that our clients are really trending more towards quality content, quality experiences. I love that. I think it's always kind of interesting to see these rank year over year and how things change in perception for different types of audits. So yeah, I think that these make sense to me, and it's really what I hear from clients as well. And at the end of the day, I think that every organization is using tech. Every organization is advancing. Every organization that we see, the risks are getting greater with advancements in technology, AI obviously being a big one of those. So this really doesn't come as any surprise to me at all, but exciting to see it validate all of the things that we do internally at A-LIGN and the things that we care most about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of these things are really interconnected, like you talked about. Like if you have a tech-enabled audit, that's going to make, with an experienced team, that's going to make your team work faster, more efficiently. That's going to give them an opportunity to focus more on quality. So certainly a difficult question, I'm sure, for folks to answer about what's most important to them. But good to see, these are the top factors people are considering.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure it was a difficult question to answer, and I couldn't agree more. All of these things are so tightly interwoven with one another that there's probably really no wrong answer here, but it certainly is interesting to see how the answers fall.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to another aspect of quality, which is, what does quality mean? What does a high quality compliance report look like? So we asked that question about how important is quality. People say it's extremely important, but what are they using to measure the quality? So this year's findings really focused on the fact that it's what's inside the report that matters. So the things people talked about were the length of the report and the number of controls tested, which again, I think is one of those answers that kind of go hand in hand. You have more controls tested, more in-depth testing, you're going to have a longer report. But that seems to be more important to people than even the name on the cover, or how nice the report looks from the outside. So I'm sure that is music to your ears as an auditor who's spending a lot of time making sure that the meat of the report is great. But would love to hear your perspective, particularly when it comes to controls tested. That seems like a really important factor to folks. And what's your perspective there?
Yeah, this is an interesting kind of a double-edged sword because quality or quantity alone doesn't always indicate positivity in my eyes. So it is interesting to kind of see how the responses lie. When I'm thinking about it, I always kind of think about, I have two vials, and I've got to fill those two vials up. There's quality and there's quantity, and one without the other doesn't really make a lot of sense. So it's really about, like, maybe it's more of a scale than two vials of juice or liquid or whatever filling them up. But I do think that it's important to understand that, regardless of the number of controls that you have, are those controls representative of the risks that are associated to your business? So, for instance, if we're talking about a SOC 2 report, many users may not know this, but behind every criteria in a SOC 2, there are points of focus, and those are specifically related to risks. When we write controls at A-LIGN, our audit team is trained specifically to ensure that every single one of those risks is mitigated, addressed, monitored, some way, shape, or form with a control, right? So a lot of times that's why you'll see in A-LIGN reports a little bit longer than some of the other reports that you're seeing, because we are trying to get some validation here that every point of focus or every risk that you could have in your organization is reasonably addressed, right? So I think that that's important. I think length of report goes into it as well, because, when you look at a report, there's kind of two big sections of the report. There's the controls and how they were tested. Of course, that's important, right? That is a very big portion of the meat and potatoes. But another portion of it is the system description that we're validating matches the controls. So does the talk match the walk, right? So it's just validating those things back and forth. But at the end of the day, end users of that report are reading it to get assurance that the things that you advertise as an organization are the things that you do. And I think that it's important to have some good detail in there. Of course, we need to make sure that detail matches the controls. So a lot of times that's why you'll see length of report, number of controls kind of go hand in hand with one another. But I always think it's interesting to see the perception of this, because we definitely talk a lot about quality matters too when you write a control. So even if we're reducing control for control, you might see controls that are a little bit more lengthy or meaty than others, because they're complex controls that's really addressing a lot of risks. So yeah, it is interesting to kind of see that and the perception of quality, because it can mean a lot of different things. We know it is no secret to us that there are a lot of providers in this space, especially in, for instance, the SOC 2 space. There are a lot of providers, and ensuring that quality is included in every product that we deliver in every audit. So yeah, there's no one size fits all approach to quality. But I think that for those reasons, a lot of times number of controls can correlate very directly to quality, but it also isn't just on that number. It really does matter about the content within those controls and how they address certain things, like points of focus in a SOC 2, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, after having these conversations with you, and, we've talked about this offline about the quality and the quantity of controls, like, I'm really excited for our survey next year to dive into those a little bit more. I think, like, we've kind of focused on this at a surface level of, like, yes, we're looking at report length. Yes, we're looking at the number of controls, but I think that there's more we can dive into and start to understand, like, even more in depth as people are caring about, again, what's inside the report. I think that there's, like, even more feedback we can gain from the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that it's interesting, like, even the lowest response, or the lowest voted factor of quality in the report being a trusted, credible auditor. Trusted, credible auditors look at a variety of risks. And even that lowest response item, in my mind, directly correlates to the number of controls that are tested or the length of the report, because it's really going into the details of things. So again, another area where there's really no wrong answer, but it is very interesting to see the perspective and how that changes. And I'm with you. I would love to write a few of those questions next year whenever we issue this same benchmark survey out, and see how things kind of alter over the course of time.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So lots to talk about on a quality front. And now we're going to dive into our second key finding, which I think will surprise no one here, which is all about AI. I think this has been a hot topic for every business out there. And this year we had a whole section of our survey about AI compliance. and helping to understand, what are our customers thinking about, what are compliance professionals concerned about. So a couple of findings here just to set a baseline for us. So over half of people said that they're concerned about the impact of AI on compliance within their organization. So people are, concerned, thinking about what they're going to do next. And then what we love to see was that 90% of people surveyed already have an AI compliance policy in place or they're working on one. So this means that, people are aware, they know that they need to take some action. We'll get into, what people are doing about AI compliance in our next slide. But I think just like kind of setting this baseline, Stephanie, how have you been seeing people talk about AI? How are you thinking about, the impacts that this is having on our business, on our customers' businesses as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no surprise, right, to anyone who's in the working world, in the workforce. You've experienced, you've been around for the changes of the internet coming along. AI is probably, I would argue, a more impactful change than we saw in the 90s of, common use of the World Wide Web and information at our fingertips. AI is really advancing that. So I think every business in the entire world is thinking about how AI can help further advance their business, regardless of the type of industry that they're in. And that has a huge impact on the business that we have, because undoubtedly there are a lot of changes going on. And as soon as I say change as an auditor, I instantly think about the change management life cycle and how that's affected, how different types of data are affected. So it's certainly impactful for us. I think independently as an organization, we think about AI in the concept of how can we utilize AI to take care of low-level tasks that really don't, we don't really need to use manpower on, so that we can free up manpower to have more quality conversations with our clients, and utilize the abilities of AI for good, and really keeping a human North Star in everything that we do, I think is really important. And I think that there are a lot of organizations that are out there in the same breath. We're also seeing a huge influx of new organizations with AI specific products. So it's across the board. It doesn't really matter if you are a new organization, the size of your organization, the market, or the industry that you're in. AI is really impacting the entire world, and we're definitely seeing a lot of clients talk about it. Obviously, new things bring a little bit of fear, uneasiness, skepticism. Change is not always the easiest thing, but organizations are really excited. I think at the end of the day, Elizabeth, is kind of the feeling that I get. This is a new breath of fresh air, and they're excited to see how it can change their business, and really even how it can change their compliance programs and their ability to kind of scale and manage all of that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to AI, I'm always kind of thinking about it from two perspectives. One, which is like, how are businesses utilizing it to improve their workflows, to work more efficiently? So like you said, like, how can compliance teams use AI for good? How can they improve their processes? But then there's the other factor of like, how do you manage the risks of AI? Like, that's introducing a whole new risk into your business. And so compliance teams need to think about like both how they can utilize it for good, but also manage their teams and manage their companies to make sure that they're not introducing additional risk.
100%. Yeah, it is interesting to kind of see the different approach that organizations are taking. Some more proactive, some are kind of sitting back and waiting to see what their biggest competitors are doing. And, I think that it is very interesting space to be in right now, but we definitely get a ton of questions about this and how this is going to change, maybe even the types of audits that our organizations that we audit go through.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into the next question that we asked, which is, we've seen the influx of new assessments and certifications around AI. So ISO 42001 is a great example, but there's also others, like HITRUST has a AI risk assessment, and there's a few others. We're seeing the EU AI Act coming into play. And so we wanted to ask people, like, how ready are they for this? Are they planning to pursue AI compliance within the next year? And so really interesting to see that 53% of people said yes, within the next 12 months, they will be going down this avenue. Another 23% said in the next 24 months. So that's, 3/4 of people saying in the next 2 years they're going to be pursuing AI compliance. Was this surprising to you?
You know, at first it kind of was. And then I was thinking about it. This is maybe not surprising for the point that we're at right now. A year ago, I think these numbers were very different. So when I think about this, the smallest percentage of respondents said that when their customers start asking for it, or when it's mandated and required of them, that was the most common answer a year ago. And it was new. It was very, very new, right? Some organizations we were seeing were very much in the trenches of AI, and they were working at maybe a quicker speed, and their products were more AI focused products at the forefront of their business. As that has shifted, even in the last 12 months, I think we've seen a huge shift in AI, the advancement of it, the accuracy, the adoption rates, I think, is also very different than it was 12 months ago. So at first, I kind of was shocked about this. And then I was thinking more about it, Elizabeth. And I know whenever this first came out, you and I talked about it. And I said, really? Like, I didn't think that people were there yet. I'm super excited to see it, because I'm excited about some of the new products and the new audits that are out. And 53% of respondents saying that they're ready to travel that path in the next 12 months tells me my team's going to have a lot of work to do, which we're excited about. We don't shy away from that at all. But I think that this response is very different than what it would have been 12 months ago. And I am excited to see it in another 12 months from now, because I think that we are going to see, it's like a wildfire. It spreads really rapidly. Once one organization that's a big recognizable name in an industry adopts a new standard, it's like dominoes. Everything falls really quickly after that. So I think that you are going to see customers start asking a lot more for this naturally, and it's probably going to be a little bit dependent on the type of industry that you're working in. But no, the longer I sat with this data, the more it actually didn't surprise me. But a year ago, it would have knocked my socks off. I really wouldn't have believed that was the answer, 12 months ago.
Yeah, no, and I think that this is just, things are changing so quickly. And, we did this survey back in October, and I bet that the answers would be even more different now. Like, I bet more people are thinking about this, more people are ready to pull the trigger. I think even in the conversations that we're seeing in the market, like with ISO 42001 in particular, there was a lot of curiosity about it last year. But now that curiosity has turned into, okay, well, how to make an action plan? What do I do next? How do I actually prepare my organization for this? How do I set aside the budget for it? And so I think that, it's becoming more real, and people are, they're realizing the impacts of AI from in a positive way, but also, again, realizing that they need to, find ways to control it, and also be able to prove to the market that they're using it responsibly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of combustion with our clients with new AI offerings that they're coming out with. And, I'm thinking of a couple of clients that I've more recently had conversations with, even back in like the December timeframe, across December, January, and February. And from December to February, even their approach to some of the AI assessments has changed drastically in that timeframe, because of new products that are rolling out and the need for that, and their competitors adopting some of these new frameworks too. So yeah, I think it is a very, very rapid change that we are seeing, and I could not agree more with that last statement, Elizabeth.
That's great. And I think one of the things you mentioned was about different industries being more primed and ready for this. And, I think this makes a lot of sense here that, software companies in particular are kind of leading the charge when it comes to AI compliance, which makes a lot of sense. These are the companies that are utilizing AI, building AI first products. And one great example of this is our customer, Synthesia. So they are an AI video company, and they were the first AI video company to get 42001 certified. And I know that you met with some folks from their team at our SKO last week. So wanted to hear a little bit about what you heard from them and why ISO 42001 was important to them.
Absolutely. I mean, for them, that is a huge portion of their business. They have an AI product. So it makes very natural sense that they would be interested in securing, all of the background details of that through something like an ISO 42001. I think that it's interesting to see the organizations that use it as a proactive measure. So we see a lot of organizations contract with us for audits for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it is a sales motion, sometimes it is an internal security motion as the forefront. I think every single reason any organization decides to conduct an audit is a contributing factor to why they sign an agreement with us at the end of the day, right? So it may not be their leading factor, but it is a factor of their decision-making process in one way, shape, or form. I think it's very natural that the software industry is going down the line of AI compliance first, because it makes sense, right? AI is residing in a lot of different software startups, a lot of different, more advanced enterprise level software organizations as well. So I think that that makes a very natural cadence that they're going to lead the way on that, because they're breaking into AI first and need that support and reassurance to their customer base that they have secure products. So I think it makes a lot of sense, but we're also seeing other organizations really start pulling up from the tail end of that race, as well as they are starting to roll out new AI features, whether that's a forefront feature product or it is a way that they utilize AI in their background to further enhance their ability to serve their clients. So I think it's interesting, but talking with Synthesia, over the last couple of weeks, I think has been really interesting. They have a really interesting product too. So if you haven't checked that out, you should go to their website and see what that has to offer. And I think it'll make a lot of sense as a listener here on this particular session on why AI compliance is important to them. But really cool tool, very AI centric, and it is very natural that they would be concerned about it because their client base is concerned about it. And it's probably a differentiating factor for them in their space against their competitors as well.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the questions that we ask every year about, like, what's the driving force behind your compliance program? And I think like this is a great example of some of the answers people say are like to win new business, to build trust with customers. And I think that that's like people who are early adopters of 42001 are really thinking about that. How do they make this a competitive differentiator in the market to show that like they're thinking about AI responsibly? Versus the flip side of things, most of the time when people are getting SOC 2 now, they're not doing it to be different. They're not doing it to, forge a trail forward that no one's done before. They're doing it for C-suite mandates or, to check a box on compliance. And so it is interesting to see with the introduction of some of these new frameworks, like the way that people are thinking about compliance and, utilizing it, not just to, maintain that level of security and trust, but also like, how do they stand out in the market?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Enough about AI. Let's move on to our third theme, which is SOC 2 is not enough. So this is a great segue talking about SOC 2. I think this is really the basis for a lot of organizations' security programs. And we're seeing that this is, no longer the only thing people are pursuing. So 92% of organizations that we surveyed say that they're doing at least 2 audits a year. And 58% are doing 4 or more. So this means that people are diversifying, they're conducting multiple audits. There's a lot of things that they're managing. It's getting more complex. SOC 2 has been your bread and butter for years. Would love to hear your perspective on how you sort of seen this change happen over time and how these stats resonate with you.
Sure. I always joke that SOC 2 is kind of like the gateway drug to compliance, right? It's the stepping stone to break in and gain your confidence. And the good thing about SOC 2 also is that it gives you a nice baseline set of controls to build your security program off of, because of the variety of the criteria that's set forth by the AICPA, the points of focus or the risks that are outlined that you need to ensure that you're addressing. So it's a really good starting point. I see a lot of organizations come in and they only want to bite off a little small piece, and they bite off SOC 2 first because it's the most natural, organizational wide encompassing audit that you can really do, right? And it's got a little bit of flexibility in it. It leaves some of the controls up to the organization as an independent party to ensure that the way they apply their controls makes sense for their organization, but also addresses the big risks. So I love that about SOC 2. Obviously, we've seen the number of SOC 2s issued globally, not just by A-LIGN, increase pretty rapidly over the years. So I think that it's a good starting point, but that's the point, right, Elizabeth? It's the starting point. And then we start to see organizations spread their wings and soar, and they expand their customer base. When they're expanding their customer base, in my opinion, a lot of times they're introducing new types of data because they're getting new customers. So maybe a software company is branching out and they're obtaining different types of customers that operate in different spaces, healthcare, banking, other software organizations, whatever it may be. They're spreading the breadth of their client base out, which is spreading out the type of data that they receive. And that's kind of busting them into a new sphere or space of audit where maybe we need to start considering a HIPAA audit because we're receiving, transforming, doing something with healthcare data. And now it's important that we're giving those clients of ours, a skip level end user, we're giving them the opportunity to have some assurance and confidence in us as an organization that we're not mistreating or mishandling any of that healthcare data. So I think it is interesting to see, obviously, as we've seen our own customer base grow over the course of time, we've certainly seen them expand their services into ISO services, into more healthcare focused services. And it to me, it's a very natural indicator that businesses are growing and thriving because naturally, those audits, the variety of audits are covering different spaces, whether that be markets that they're operating in or really the types of data that they're handling.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think wanted to ask you about what are kind of those trigger points with customers about when they need to be thinking about that next audit. So we see here this graph of as company revenue increases, and as you mentioned, as they expand into new markets, get new types of customers, are there other factors or checkpoints along the way that raise a flag of okay, this is a good time for you to start thinking about, adding on?
That's a really good question. And it's not something that I think about because on a daily basis, to me, there's no hard line in the sand. It is a very gradual growth perspective. And one thing that I like to talk to clients about on an annual basis, or at least in the interim period of their audits, is are you adding a new feature? Whenever I think about kind of the core function, are you storing, processing, transmitting data? What are you doing with the data that you receive is kind of my first question. Are you adding a new feature? So are you now going to start transforming data in format? Are you going to start adding a new product line? So obviously, when you're adding a new product line, a lot of times it can indicate that's usually a good time to reevaluate and decide by offering this new product line or new feature, are we now opening ourselves up to new types of data as they see themselves grow, they see their client base grow, and really reevaluating constantly how their client needs are changing, I think is an important one. And it kind of goes back into my previous answer too, but it's a slippery slope and it's easy for that to creep up, I think, on organizations. And it's a really good practice on an annual basis, or even more often than annually, to stop and reevaluate as part of a risk assessment. That's a big part of your SOC 2 and your audits that you're already doing anyways. But I think that it's probably a very valid arguing point to stop and include that in your risk assessment as you are navigating kind of your organization's playing field and how you are growing your businesses individually. That's really important. It's also not a one tier. There's not only one level in an organization that makes that decision. So a lot of times I see, I'll hear it from software engineers. I will hear it from a CISO. I will hear it from a CFO. A lot of times I'll hear it from sales members that, hey, I'm starting to get a lot of questions about this. So I think that it should never be a siloed decision. It's probably really important to get a lot of input back in your individual organizations about what could be next, how different processes, products, customer bases are changing. So that's a That's a loaded question. That is a really loaded question. It's not necessarily an easy one to answer. We're always happy to have scoping calls. I will say that too. That's one of the more fun and interesting things of being an auditor, which sounds extremely nerdy. I recognize after it came out of my mouth, but I do think that it's fun to sit and talk strategically with organizations and their leadership teams about what's next for them, so that we can help identify, like, I've seen this come up a lot of times where we sit down and we have those conversations and we say, hey, did you know that there's actually like an add-on that you could do for your ISO 27001? There's a little add-on that's not a huge lift for you that you could do, and it would provide more assurance for you. It's not a huge lift. Sometimes it's an additional extra product or service line that we offer as well. But we're always happy to have those conversations. I think that those are the more interesting, fun conversations to have with organizations, to see where they're driving and how we can help them, answer all of their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's like what's interesting about this, is that there's not one solution, right? There's not a clear path that's going to work for everyone. And so it's about understanding, like you mentioned, the full business context, talking to multiple teams within a business and figuring out those next steps. I think when we're talking to customers, like, everyone has a little bit of a different way of approaching it. And so, yeah, it's great to have, your team and others that can weigh in and provide some advice. I think this ties nicely into a real growth area we saw last year, which is in ISO 27001. So interestingly, this was one of the biggest growths that we saw in the survey. So we asked people what audits are most important to their business. We saw a jump from 67% said ISO in 2024 to 81% in 2025. And I think we also saw this reflected in our business. We saw a huge growth of ISO. So why do you think this is? Why do you think ISO is growing in importance? And, what's your perspective?
I think that this is an interesting question, and we definitely did experience, our ISO team was one of the busier teams that we managed in the last year. So I think that it maths out exactly to what we saw happen in actuality. I think that it's for a variety of reasons. I think businesses are doing more global work in general. So they're reaching more organizations. I think ISO does a pretty good job of aligning everyone globally to their standard. A lot of other standards are based kind of on the same backbone. So I can understand why that's rising. I also think that for different markets, the gateway drug is a little bit different, right? Whenever I'm thinking about a US-based organization, for years and years, the most natural starting point has been SOC 2, and the second stepping stone in that path has a lot of times been ISO 27001. So I think that makes a lot of sense. As other parts of the world are really leaning into these things, I think that in more of an EMEA market, we are seeing ISO 27001 as the starting point, as maybe a more familiar standard to them, and then attaching a SOC 2 onto that, as well as they move the opposite direction that our US clients are expanding their businesses. So I think that it really depends on your market. But I think too that the ISO standard does a pretty good job of encompassing global perspectives, and I think we're seeing that for that reason, seeing our organizations that we've initially audited, legacy clients, expanding into ISO is a very natural movement as they expand their businesses as well.
Absolutely. Are there any other audits or assessments that you're seeing growing in popularity? Like anything else that you see up and coming?
Yeah, I mean, there's some new standards, so they're all the buzz right now. As we look to ISO 42001, we've all been able to talk about all year. It feels like an eternity. We talk a lot about AI. It doesn't matter where you go. It's AI focused, right? Everybody wants to have the punchline on AI. So ISO 42001, we've seen a ton of the CMMC standard has recently been released and published. So that's also caused a huge wave of excitement. I think that there's different standards are more exciting to others based on the markets that they serve, the industries that they serve. But I would say those are our two most commonly discussed standards, are ISO 42001 and CMMC by a long shot. We have a lot of commotion, a lot of noise about those lately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had a finding from the report this year tying into CMMC that I thought was really interesting. So going back to what we talked about, the driving force behind your compliance program. So we asked different people, why are they pursuing, compliance? What's their goal here? And we saw a big increase this year with government organizations saying that they're conducting audits to win new business. So I think this ties in really nicely with CMMC, knowing that it's going to be required by the DoD. People want to win and keep their DoD business, and so CMMC is a requirement here. So I think that this is. This tracks with what we're seeing in the market. But wanted to hear from you, when it comes to those driving forces, like what are the most common things you're hearing from folks? Like, is it C-suite mandates? Is it checking a box? Or, is it, building trust? What's coming up most often?
Yeah, I think the answer I hear the least now is checking a box. I think we're kind of past that motion, and that's really exciting to me. As you can imagine, how fun is it to audit someone who doesn't want to be audited? That's like the worst combination possibly to put an auditor into. But I really think that it's more of a proactive measure at this point. And the two biggest leaders that I see for that are, we want to win new business. Our sales team wants to go out and have this as an advantage, a tactical advantage in the field against our competitors. And that's great, right? When you can get a sales organization on board with the motion for compliance, that is an exciting day. And I think that it is a great sales tool, and it's exciting to me that our work is honored in that way. So I love that. A lot of times it's more of a C-suite mandate, or because it's a client demand, right? Like, we have to have this level of assurance to break into these markets. And I think we see that a lot up market. Whenever we're talking to clients that are bigger clients, Fortune 500 companies or larger, we are seeing the response rate of, this is expected of us. Like, it is not really a negotiable. We are just the golden standard of expectation, and we are expected to move forward in this. So sometimes that's driven from a C-suite. A lot of times it's driven from customers though. And, even it doesn't really matter the size of organization. I feel like, when customers start asking, organizations are going that route. So I think it's interesting to see it. I wasn't surprised to see that this statistic that's on the page here now, a lot of government affiliated organizations do only government affiliated work. So naturally the requirement is going to be there, and they don't have a ton of choice for the viability of their business, which I think is, always kind of interesting. But no, I think there's a lot of different reasons why organizations choose to go down the path of a new standard, whether it's new to everyone in the world because it's just been published, or if it's an additional standard. It's usually for one of those two reasons: either customers are demanding it, or because we want to win new business. And at the end of the day, that's why we're all in business, right? Is to serve another customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this leads into our final theme, which is about audit complexity. And so we talked about, you talked about Fortune 500 companies and enterprise companies, and we're seeing across the board that they're doing more audits. They're spending more time and more money on this every year. Compliance is a big part of their business. And so with, they're scaling businesses, they're managing more, they're doing more. I think the thing we hear commonly is just how complicated this gets. How they're managing maybe multiple auditors, sometimes 3-4 different audit partners, managing sometimes upwards of 10 audit cycles a year. So one of the things that we've been talking a lot about at A-LIGN is audit consolidation and audit harmonization. So would love to hear your perspective here on like why this matters and why we're trying to help our customers solve this problem.
Yeah, absolutely. At a baseline, we want to feel like a partner to you. We don't want to feel like a nagging, teacher that's grading a paper. At the end of the day, we want to bring value. That's what we pride ourselves on. So I think that it's important to understand that baseline whenever we are talking about this. But, as organizations start to add and really build a program, a security program that is not just 1 or 2 audits, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and it's not the easiest to digest process. And there are a ton of synergies to be had. We pride ourselves on efficiency as well. It's not just all quality focused and consuming all of the time in the entire world for our clients. That's not the goal that we have at the end of the day. We want to provide a high quality service offering in an efficient manner so that you do not dread the day that your phone rings and it's me calling you. I want you to be excited to answer the phone when I call. So one of the things that we have worked long and hard on is, utilizing technology to be able to synchronize some of our efforts when it comes to evidence collection, when it comes to aligning. I know that is a very redundant thing to say, but whenever we're aligning all of your audit periods and synchronizing those audits, there is a lot of synergy that can be taken from one audit to the next, and we want you to feel that in your organization. So I think that just being focused on not only one aspect of delivering service, we have a lot of goals in mind whenever we are talking to clients, whether new or existing, or clients that are even new clients to us, but you've done this quite a few times. You have quite a few audits under your belt. You're not, this isn't your first rodeo. That's important too, to recognize that even though you do audits now, maybe with another provider, you can come to A-LIGN and we can help you streamline those efforts so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck at the end of the day, from what you pay us and from the cost that you have internally in your own internal resources, because that's probably the larger cost. If we were to step back and paper all of this out, I would venture to say that organizations spend more internally with their own teams preparing and maintaining their compliance than they do with their auditor. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we found that like 50% of people are spending upwards of 6 months a year on their audit program. So like this is a huge part of their team's, day to day. And taking up a lot of internal resources that could be spent on other projects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or refining, tweaking the quality aspects of your program instead of spending so much time doing heavy lifting.
Absolutely. So I think that like everyone can agree, consolidation and harmonization, great idea, something that we can strive for. Can you walk through like what our process looks like? How do we take this complex world that someone brings to us of, hey, I've got all these different audits, I have all these different timelines, and how do we distill that down into something that is a little bit more streamlined?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we're looking at patterns, right? We're looking to see why you're doing what you're doing. So why do you have audit periods or certification cycles that are not synchronized first and foremost? Like, what are your business drivers? Understanding what you need as an organization independently before we're making any suggestions. We do not believe in a one size fits all approach. So it's very carefully curated. And then it's looking at scopes. It's looking to see from audit to audit, what do those scopes look like and how much overlap is there from an enterprise level? What types of controls reach all of the audit standards that you do, and how can we synchronize those efforts so that you can provide evidence one time? So a lot of times it's diving into your past reports. It's looking to see what synergies we can kind of weld together for you in a way, and bring together and say, hey, look, you're providing this piece of evidence multiple times throughout the year. And if we consolidated these audits down into maybe 1/4 of the year, you could provide them one time. We can apply it across the board to many different audits. And we're still going to do the work. We're going to make sure that it meets all of the standards and all of the audit frameworks, but you can just provide it one time and we'll give you the feedback on it then. So I think that that's an important thing to understand and recognize. And then ultimately it's building a plan. It's building a plan that fits for your business, your needs, and then executing on that and keeping everybody in the loop. There's a couple of like kind of key themes that we have as an audit team at A-LIGN. Transparency is really important. Communication's key. Adults don't like surprises. Say that one all the time. It's really important to understand that we want to be in the loop with you. We want you to be in the loop of where we stand with our audits. So it's really just synchronizing those efforts. And at the end of the day, it's making sure that the plan is right for your business and that it makes sense. And we're leaning into areas of overlap so that you can do the least amount of work possible. We'll still make sure everything maps out to all the frameworks, but really leaning into the standards that overlap is the underlying key point to audit harmonization and synchronization. And then making sure that you're not missing deadlines. At the end of the day, we know you need final reports and certifications in hand. So ensuring that we plan appropriately to get to that end point on time, early, preferably, is what we strive for. And it's kind of all about good planning, really, at the end of the day, Elizabeth.
Yeah, and I think that ties nicely back to the theme we were talking about earlier, which is, there's no one way to do this, and every organization is different. And so it's about, having the right team, both internally and, with your audit team, to figure out like what's the best plan for you. Like, what's the right mix of audits to pursue, what's the right timing for them, what's the right roadmap. And so I think that, if you're looking for, one size fits all solution, this isn't the place for it. But you can find something that's going to be customized and personalized to your needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of the key, another key theme of it, right? Is like, it's customized. It's for your business individually, to make sure that it fits you. We don't need you to fit us. We can come and we can adapt, and we'll make sure that the plan is right. And we will help identify opportunities for efficiency improvements when it comes to an audit program. And I think that is another, I think, interesting part of our jobs, is to help you understand, like, hey, I don't know if you realize this, but we're kind of your other auditors, or, when you do these audits at different times, we're asking for these same pieces of evidence, and they can apply to many different frameworks, many different controls, and let us help you work smarter, not harder. So, I have that conversation with my 11-year-old son a lot. Let's work smarter, not harder, and figure out where those areas of overlap reside. And that is probably another way to summarize what audit harmonization is we can get a lot of work done with maybe less effort than what we're putting out now. So let us help you identify those areas and make an action plan and execute on it.
That's amazing. Well, we are almost at time here. So wanted to remind folks that you can download the full report on our website. The link is in the chat here. Stephanie, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we go?
Elizabeth, I think just to wrap up on my last thought there is one other thing that I think is important. Whether you are ready to bite into the SOC 2 or ISO 27001 world, don't think about what you need today. Think about what you need tomorrow. Think about what your compliance journey could look like. And I think it's always so daunting when someone asks you, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? But as an organization, I think that it's important to consider those things, because what you need this year, in the way that technology changes, the way that security and risks evolve based on new technologies exposed to our businesses, I think it's really important to think a few steps ahead, play chess instead of checkers, maybe, and think about, is a SOC 2 audit that is very, very budget friendly through a provider, is it the right place to start? Or is it better to pick an organization that I can grow with, that's going to be a partner to me? And, think about the scenario that you could be in, where you are conducting 3 or 4 or 5 audits every year for different frameworks, or maybe even different types of products that you offer, and the resources that go into that. I think, at the end of the day, breadth of services that an organization can offer you is really important when you're selecting an auditor. I think that's kind of what the benchmark report tells us as well, is that, organizations aren't single faceted anymore. They're not looking for just a SOC 2 audit or just an ISO 27001 audit. So if I was going to depart and leave any guiding words of wisdom, I would say, think about your long-term vision of what your compliance program would be, and take into consideration the breadth of services that an organization can offer you before you sign contracts and get into the first audit. There's a lot of synergy that can be built year over year when you build a good relationship with an auditor. And I think that's what the report says too. Quality is important. Expanding services is important. Where you go next year is important. So a little bit of unsolicited advice, I guess, from my audit brain.
That's a perfect way to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks all.